We dive into studs and duds from the Ravens' Week 16 loss to the Cincinnati Bengals and the course of their 2021 season so far, next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, and here, unfortunately, there is no Spencer Schultz on Taco Tuesday. I know Spencer's day is usually Taco Tuesday, but here today, he will not be joining the show, so it's just me once again, and, second straight day in a row of just me on the show, and for today, we're going to switch it up a little bit, because obviously Spencer, such great insight and analysis, but without him and without his analysis on this Week 16 game, I do want to dive a little bit more into it, but from a different perspective. And I know I did this such a long time ago. I can't even remember, but I do want to get into like studs and duds, winners and losers from this Week 16 game with the Bengals. There were some positives. There obviously were some negatives. The biggest one being it was a loss, but yeah, talking about just who performed well, who didn't, and why I'm impressed, why I wasn't so impressed, and, kind of what the themes have been around those certain players throughout this entire season. And then taking that last idea and moving into the final segment where I do just want to kind of it's almost like a mini preview because I want to do this once the season actually ends for the Ravens and the NFL season ends. But in the final segment, I do want to talk about just like general studs and duds and winners and losers from the Ravens season from a player perspective. So, taking the full 16 weeks we've seen so far and talking about who has performed well and who hasn't. But we'll start with the Week 16 game against the Bengals and talk about the offense in the first segment, winners and losers from that unit, defense in the second segment, and then the full season for the Ravens in the final segment. So with all that being said, let's dive into this episode here on Taco Tuesday. Before we do that, though, I greatly appreciate everybody who has already subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please do so. It will help out a lot, and I greatly appreciate all the support that I've gotten from everybody as we have, almost gone about 4 months here, 4 full months of full video. So it's been great. And, you see my face, see my background and everything, but we're not just in video form, we're also in audio form. So you can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you get those podcasts. And on YouTube, of course, be sure to like, and again, subscribe to the channel. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at CashTricker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So all that being said, let's dive into this studs and duds / winners and losers episode and talk about these offensive players in the first segment. And look, when I say somebody is a dud, I'm not saying, oh, this guy's, absolutely awful and terrible and, he's a loser or stuff like that. I'm not trying to be mean with it. I'm just saying, yeah, he didn't play well. It is what it is. I'm not going to completely lie and say, oh, this guy played great and this other guy played great. And they clearly didn't. I'm not going to say the same thing about a player who, maybe people want to push an agenda and say, oh, he didn't play great. But no, I'm going to give credit where it's due. And I guess I'm going to take it away where it's due as well. So we'll start off with some of the studs on the offensive side of the ball in the first segment here. And I think we have to give a nod to most definitely Josh Johnson. I mean, what Josh Johnson did against Cincinnati defense that, look, is not terrible, right? They were missing DJ Reader in the run game, but this is a defense that has shown up. It has been a much better unit than a lot of people in Cincinnati anticipated it would be. And Johnson himself, comes into this game being with the team for just over a week, and he performed well, all things considered. He finished the game 28 of 40. He had 304 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, also had 5 carries for 10 yards. So the rushing stats, we'll just kind of throw those away. But look, Johnson is a definite winner, definite stud. He's shown that he still has it. That was one of my takeaways I wrote for Ravens Wire. For a player that, was thrust into a high leverage situation, a high pressure situation, no, the Ravens didn't win the game, but it wasn't like it was because of Johnson and the mistakes he made. Johnson threw a late interception when, we can be honest, the game was already out of hand at that point. And other than that, I mean, he played well. He was zipping the ball in with accuracy and with some power. We saw a bunch of plays from his receivers, who we'll talk about here in this studs segment of this segment. Kind of funny how that works in a couple seconds. But yeah, Johnson, I thought, definitely stepped up to the plate and was really ready in this game, even though he was, trying to get up to speed. He's a player who I think definitely increased his stock, whether it be signing on with someone else for next season or coming back to Baltimore, whether it be any of that. Johnson is a definite winner and a stud, in my opinion, from this game. And I talked about those receivers, and yeah, let's talk about him a bit. James Perche, definite stock up guy, winner, whatever you want to call him. Perche, look, he's earned some snaps in this offense. And I know the whole thing of, the Ravens have too many talented wide receivers, so they're going to have to leave somebody out. Look, I get it. But I think at this point, maybe it's Sammy Watkins. I mean, this is kind of a hot take, I won't lie, but I don't know. I feel like, look, Sammy Watkins is great. He's a veteran presence. He has made big catches for the Ravens this season. But, for a guy like Perche, who I think deserves to be in the slot a lot more and deserves to have some more snaps, he showed that with an increased role and with a quarterback who keeps finding him, he will make catches, and tough ones at that. 7 receptions in this game against Cincinnati, 76 yards. That's 10.9 yards per catch. I mean, he did a lot of great things. We saw that one, what was it, on a 3rd and over 10? I can't remember the exact yardage, but made like a coming back to the football type catch, and there were like 5 defenders around him. He's like powering through them and wrestling the ball away from them. And it's plays like those that earn you more snaps. And I think Perche has definitely done that. So he's a winner. Rashad Bateman is a winner. Didn't have the biggest stat line, 4 receptions, 26 yards, but his first touchdown in the NFL is going to make him a winner all day long. And it was nice to see him get in the end zone. It was a nice slant play to him. Josh Johnson finds him. So Rashad Bateman and Josh Johnson will always have that connection, because Johnson was the quarterback who found Bateman for his first NFL touchdown. And so, yeah, Bateman's been great for them. And in this game, made a couple of really key plays, especially the opening drive touchdown for them. I mean, we can't talk about winners without Mark Andrews, and he'll be coming back in the third segment. Don't worry. But Mark Andrews is just unbelievable. I think he's the best tight end in the NFL right now. I mean, you can kind of rotate in guys to that title based off of who's performing well and playing well. Like, obviously Travis Kelce's up there, and he is one of the best, if not the best, over the course of a full season. But over the past 3 weeks, it's been Mark Andrews 1,000%. Kelce obviously didn't play in the Chiefs Week 16 win against Pittsburgh, but regardless, Andrews has put up 3 straight games of 10 receptions and 100 yards and a touchdown. That has never been done before by a tight end. So yeah, Andrews is playing well. And against Cincinnati, again, 8 receptions for Mark Andrews, and he had 125 yards and a touchdown. So yeah, he's done a lot of great things, and there was 10 targets, not 10 catches, excuse me. But for Andrews, he's a player who has done a ton of great things for this Ravens team, and that did not change in Week 16. So he's a guy who I thought was a winner on the offense for sure. And on the offensive line, there were players who performed well. I'm not going to give anybody like a specific title for it. I'm not going to say anybody was a loser either, because the Ravens didn't, like, Josh Johnson didn't get sacked a ton. He was only sacked 1 time. Okay, here's what I'll say. Winners were the pass protection, or was the pass protection, and losers was the run protection or run blocking. There you go. So yeah, I thought the pass protection was decent. I thought the run blocking was not as decent. And the Ravens did have to move away from the run as a game script, and I understand that, but still averaging under 3 yards a carry as a team is not gonna win your football game. So there's that. Losers from this game, or duds, or stock downs, however you want to say it, for me, include the running backs, all of them, and that's only 2, Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray. Freeman had 6 carries for 17 yards and a touchdown, but it's only 2.8 yards per carry. Murray had 5 carries for 12 yards. That's 2.4 yards per carry. The team, again, averaged 2.4 yards per carry as a whole. Just, not going to cut it. The Ravens are a one-dimensional offense at this point. They showed flashes in Week 15, and I said on a podcast with Kadri Ismail that, yeah, I was impressed with how they ran against Green Bay in Week 15, but it did not carry over whatsoever to Week 16, and it's part of the reason why the Ravens' offense has struggled a little bit this year, because of the fact that their run offense is just not what it's been. And look, rightfully so. They're missing J.K. Dobbins, they're missing Gus Edwards, and Ronnie Stanley in the run block game. I understand, but it just has hindered them so much, and I don't know. It's been rough. So those are some duds for me. I thought the run game was pretty disappointing in this one. I won't lie in that regard. And yeah, again, another dud for me was the run blocking in general. So those are some studs and duds from the Ravens Week 16 matchup with the Bengals on the offensive side of the ball. We'll head into our first break. When we get back, we'll be diving into the defensive side of the ball and talking about studs and duds from that unit in Week 16. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. We return here. It's our second segment of this Locked On Ravens Tuesday edition. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. And now moving on to the defense and talking about some studs and duds from the Ravens Week 16 matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals. And there are a bunch of guys who deserve some nods in both of these categories. I want to start off with Patrick Queen, though. I know I talked about him a pretty good amount yesterday and, today for my, a couple of articles, and even yesterday for my takeaways article for Ravens Wire, it kind of highlighted, look, Patrick Queen has done a ton of good things over the second half of the season. And in this game in Week 16, look, he was amazing once again. He ended up finishing the game second on the team in tackles with 9 total. He had a great pass deflection early in the game where, look, he did not get his head around and he was covering a running back in the end zone. But look, he put his arms up, didn't touch the receiver or the running back in this case, and he ended up making a play on the football, which, he didn't have to turn his head around to do in that scenario. So good for him on that. But look, the way that he's played confidently, the way that he feeds off of that energy, right? He's in the middle of all this stuff now. He looked a bit hesitant early on in the season. And I know a lot of people saw that and were saying, look, if you're going to play middle linebacker for this team, you have to understand your keys and you have to play fast and you have to play physical and you have to trust yourself and your teammates. And it's something he's been doing this season. And in Week 16, we saw it where on multiple plays, he shoots the gap, he fights over blockers, and he ended up getting in the backfield, getting Joe Mixon a couple of times and stuff along those lines. And he's also been a much better tackler over the second half of the season. So it's been great to see. And in Week 16, again, he just continued to build and grow upon what he had done. And I'm very pleased and very happy for Queen. But let's talk about the leading tackler for this team in Tony Jefferson, who ended up having 10 tackles, also had a sack, had a pass deflected. He did it all. Now, minor side note, the Ravens actually placed Jefferson on the reserve COVID list on Monday. They activated 3, though, in Jimmy Smith, Pernell McPhee, and practice squad wide receiver Jalen Moore. So some good news and some bad news. But back to Jefferson, his play on Sunday against Cincinnati was very encouraging. And for a player in Jefferson who suffered that gruesome injury in a Baltimore uniform a couple of seasons ago, was let go by the team and kind of bounced around and hadn't really gotten many opportunities, was with San Francisco earlier in the season. This is a player who I think values every snap he's out there, values every moment he's with an organization, especially one like Baltimore, where he has said it means so much to him. And look, that passion overflowed on Sunday on the field. He was physical, was wrapping up, was tackling very well. And it's a role that Jefferson is good at. If you ask him to play deep safety in a cover role like that, that's not what his skill set is. And I think when he plays to his skill set and when he is able to be put in that situation to maximize it, he's a heck of a player. And he showed it on Sunday against Cincinnati. And this is a player that many people, when he was brought back, many were excited, myself included, but people saw the contract he signed during that offseason when, there were high expectations for him. And he was one of the better safeties, one of the better defensive players on the free agent market that year. And he just didn't pan out the way I think the Ravens wanted him to. And look, Jefferson was disappointed, I feel like, in his performance at points. And, it just didn't work out. But this time around, and look, it's one game, right? We got to kind of temper expectations a bit. But that doesn't change the fact that in my eyes, he is a winner in this game. And I'm very confident. I'm very confident saying that. Another winner, let's talk a bit about Isaiah Mack. Isaiah Mack, the defensive lineman who was a call-up in this game, much like Jefferson was, and ended up putting on somewhat of a clinic. Should have had 2 sacks. He should have had 2 sacks. Only finished the game with 1 on the official box score. Had 2 total tackles as well. But, he played well. And it was a couple of plays for him where he got the Joe Burrow and got a sack. Now, the reason he didn't have 2 was because he got a sack, but the Bengals actually challenged the 12-men on the field penalty that wasn't called on the Ravens. The league and the referees decided that actually both teams had 12 men on the field. So the sack was wiped out and the Bengals got to do 3rd and 9 again. But yeah, he showed some interior pass rush, and we saw the Ravens, or we have seen the Ravens need some of that over the past couple of seasons. They have struggled to generate interior pressure. Broderick Washington also had a sack in this game. He's another winner in my eyes, especially with Justin Madubuike out and Calais Campbell not being at 100% and kind of being limited in this game, and obviously Derek Wolfe being out for the year, which has been it's been a thing for him. But yeah, I thought Isaiah Mack played very well. And there's potential there. Again, it's just one game. We have to kind of temper expectations and say, look, let's see what he can do if he's called up again and if he can do it again. But he impressed me, and he is a winner from this game as well on the defensive side of the ball. And on a day where the Ravens could barely stop anything the Bengals did, those are players for me who really made their mark. I thought Josh Bynes played overall decently well. I'm not going to give anybody in the secondary outside of Jefferson a winner tag. I mean, Chuck Clark played all right. Brandon Stevens was okay. Actually, I'll give Tavon Young a slight winner grade. I think Young has been great this season, and he actually left this game very briefly. And with Anthony Averett being ruled out, just a tiny factoid here, the Ravens had 0 healthy players from their initial 2021 depth chart, or 0 healthy corners from their initial 2021 depth chart available to them. They had none at a point in week 16. You had Marlon Humphrey, who was on IR, Peters, who was on IR, Averett, who was out, Young, who was out but did return after a brief amount of time. And you can talk about Chris Westry and Jimmy Smith and Devontae Harris and Khalil Dorsey and Amon Marshall and Nigel Warrior, Sean Wade, all those different players. None of them were still available for them during that brief moment in time. So kind of crazy there. But yeah, Young, look, I think Tavon Young's been the Ravens' best tackler this season. It's kind of a hot take in my opinion, but look, it is a take, and I think it is a real one. So Tavon Young, yeah, that's a slight winner grade for me, but just because I think he played overall decently well. There are some losers definitely in this game from the defense. I mean, oh boy, Kevon Seymour, definitely one. Not great. He was 3rd on the team in tackles with 7. And as I talked about yesterday on the show, the reason was because he kept getting burnt and had to bring the guy down who was getting burned by. So, yeah, sometimes it's not great to have a high tackle number because it means you're getting burnt. Jefferson's, it was more of he was coming down and making plays, whereas Seymour, it was, all right, T. Higgins caught a ball for 20 yards. Let's get him down and limit it to 20 instead of 50 and plays like that. So Seymour did not have a good game. He, definitely a loser in this week 16 game against Cincinnati. And you can say the same thing about Daryl Worley. Now, Worley had a interception taken away from him on a defensive holding call. Look, it was not defensive holding. I think hands to the face or illegal contact would have been a proper penalty. There should have been a penalty on him. The interception should have been taken away, but to call it offensive holding was just not the proper call, in my opinion. But, apples and oranges, whatever. So Worley also just had not a good game. And look, it's honestly like, what do you expect at this point? Because the Ravens are down so many corners and the Bengals have very talented pass catching weapons. So you kind of put 2 and 2 together and you have a 525-yard performance by Joe Burrow. It's understandable. It makes sense, but that doesn't necessarily excuse the fact that, these guys didn't have good games. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you know what? They played decently well because they were called up off the practice squad. No, they didn't play well. And so that's ultimately what it is. And so for Seymour, for Worley, I thought, Brandon Stevens was up and down. Averett left the game. Hopefully he's okay. John Harbaugh, it's probably 50-50 for him to play in week 17, which again, is just a huge loss if he's not able to play in this game. But my 2 biggest duds from this game on the defensive side of the ball were definitely Worley and Seymour. And look, it's unfortunate because with the Ravens fully healthy, it's understandable that this game probably goes the Ravens' way. And teams, and this is something, again, I talked about yesterday. So if you haven't checked out that show, I highly recommend. It was our recap episode of the game. But look, teams go through injuries every single season. The Ravens in 2019, I think, had 2 major injuries. It was Tavon Young and it was Pernell McPhee. And the Bengals are kind of having that same injury luck this season, while the Ravens just flat out are not. And one year it's great, the next year it's bad. And it happens for whatever reason it may be, non-contact, contact, preseason, regular season, training camp. It's been all of it for the Ravens. And so it's been, kind of upsetting in that regard because you're thinking about just how different this season could have been or could be right now if the Ravens had just a couple of their healthy players back, whether Lamar Jackson was starting or J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards were back, or they had Marlon Humphrey or Marcus Peters or Ronnie Stanley. But at the end of the day, the Ravens do have that next man up mentality. They're not going to give up. They go out there with the players they have, and they perform the best they can. And on Sunday against the Bengals, the secondary did not step up to the plate, as they just did not have a ton of healthy bodies that were still even on the team in week 1, and that is where they are at right now. We'll head into our final break, though. When we get back, we'll be diving into studs and duds for the Ravens across their entire 2021 season through 16 weeks so far. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. BetOnline, as you cover this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before, as football continues to march through the college bowl season and the pro football playoffs. BetOnline remains the #1 spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. So wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, so don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available. BetOnline, where the game starts. We return here. It's our final segment of this Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here with you, and we talked about some studs and duds from the Ravens' Week 16 loss to the Bengals, but now we're going to dive into some studs and duds from the Ravens, just the entire course of the season so far through 16 weeks for them. And they're again, both in multiple categories, and well, I guess multiple in both categories. I switched them up. But for the studs, I'm going to start off with Tyler Huntley. Huntley has been phenomenal this year in the games he's been called upon. He has played in 5 games for the team, completed 86 of 125 passes, 743 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception through the air. Also has 29 carries for 168 yards. He has 2 touchdowns on the ground. I was looking at Tyson Williams. I'm still manifesting Tyson Williams here, and we'll talk about him in a second. But yeah, for Tyler Huntley, he's a player that his stock has gone so far up over the course of this season. He can start in this league. Now, it's not going to be for Baltimore with Lamar Jackson healthy, right? That is not a conversation I'm having. But for me, I think that Huntley has shown that the Ravens have 2 very competent, very good quarterbacks who can lead this team down the field, who can keep them in games, and who can win them games as well. Now, I know Huntley, as a starter, he didn't beat Green Bay, and he came in against Cleveland and didn't win that game and stuff like that. But, it's by a point, or it's by 2 points. And things like that are just so minor when you're thinking about the performance of a single player. Now, in the grand scheme of things, wins are the most important thing. But when talking about Huntley's performance, yeah, I've been very, very impressed by him overall. Talking about, more studs. We talked about Mark Andrews. I'm going to say Mark Andrews has absolutely been a stud this season. 132 targets for, he has 93 receptions, 1,187 yards and 9 touchdowns. He also has lost a fumble, but, push comes to shove. Andrews is still one of the best tight ends in the NFL, and has shown he's a security blanket. He's a player who can be trusted by quarterbacks. He's a player who can make something out of nothing, who can really turn up field and make yards after the catch happen. We haven't seen a ton of struggles with drops from him this season. There have been a couple, but, it hasn't been stuff to derail his season or anything. And he's a Pro Bowler for a reason here. I'll call Marquise Brown a stud as well. People have been kind of up and down on him, but look, I'm up. 85 receptions on 130 targets, 953 yards, 6 touchdowns. The drops have been more of a concern for him than Andrews. Week 3 comes to mind against Detroit, and man, how long ago was week 3? It's crazy to think about that, but yeah, Marquise Brown has turned into a very, very nice receiver at the NFL level. And I'm even gonna go as far as call Rashad Bateman a season-long stud. And I know people are gonna look at the stats and say, what are you talking about? It's 37 receptions on 54 targets, 435 yards, 1 touchdown, only played in 10 games. But when Rashad Bateman has the ball in his hands, good things happen. There's no doubt. Good things happen when Rashad Bateman has the ball in his hands. And I stand by the fact that he's been a difference maker for them this season. So big credit to Rashad Bateman and what he's been able to do. And also Devin Duvernay. Let's not forget about Devin Duvernay. The first-time Pro Bowler as a return specialist has made his mark in multiple ways and has been obviously one of the best returners in the NFL. On kickoffs, 22 for 541 yards. That's 24.6 yards per return. And then you have punts 25 for 360 at 14.4 yards per return average. So all those guys have been great. Also, we can't forget Bradley Bozeman and Kevin Zeitler, two really big mainstays on this Ravens offensive line. Have just performed so well. And I mean, look, I'm very impressed that the Ravens offensive line has been through very big amounts of turmoil this season and just rotations and whatever, but I've been impressed with them. Those two, at least, Zeitler and Bozeman, over the course of the season. And also Patrick Ricard, who has really turned out to be such a key piece for them. He's done great things for him. For the defense, I'll give a shout out to Patrick Queen again, but I won't go into too much detail because we kind of talked about him a bit in the second segment, and I want to give some more love to other guys such as Tyus Bowser, who has come on very strong in his 5th NFL season, 51 total tackles, 6 sacks. I mean, he's this Ravens leading sack guy. And next is Odafe Owe at 5, who is another stud, comes into the season as a rookie and comes into a complex defense and has shown prowess both as a pass rusher and as a run stuffer. So been very good to see Owe do his thing. Justin Madubuike's had a great season. Tavon Young, I talked about. He's been great for him. I love what he brought to the table or has brought to the table. Calais Campbell also had a pretty good season for him, or has had a pretty good season for him. He's still a bit banged up right now, but regardless, I think that there are a lot of players who could deserve the honor, but those are just some of the many that are on my mind at this point. And talking about some of the duds here, I think all the running backs, all of them, except for Devonta Freeman, who was kind of in mixed bag territory for me. I've been impressed with how he's improved over the course of the second half of the season, but Latavius Murray has been a decently big disappointment to me. 92 attempts, 320 yards, 3.5 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns, but, just not the player I think many were expecting to get when they signed him. And look, no J.K. Dobbins, no Gus Edwards. I understand that they're not those types of players, but still, it's been not great. Tyson Williams has been a dud as well. I mean, such high expectations coming into the season. On the year, just 34 carries, 181 yards in that week 1 touchdown against the Las Vegas Raiders. So, yeah, that's that. And then if you want to count Le'Veon Bell, I mean, you can. 2.7 yards per carry for Bell over the course of the season for him. Other than that, on the offense, I mean, Alejandro Villanueva has been a pretty big dud for me. He's been very inconsistent this year, kind of teetering on the not good side of that, inconsistent. He's a player I don't expect back in Baltimore. Tyree Phillips has also been a bit of a dud for me. I know he's, tackle's not his position. It is guard, and I think he's much better there. But the play that we've seen out of him at tackle is dud worthy, in my opinion. So hopefully we will see more of him at guard next season whenever, he is able to get back on the field, or even this season, if he is able to return. I know Ben Cleveland is a player a lot of people want to see more of, though, and I think he could be the future for the Ravens at left guard. On defense, there are a couple players. I expected more from Jalen Ferguson. He had a great preseason, and I really thought that he would be able to crack the rotation, but there are a ton of talented pass rushers, and he just, from a stat perspective, from a games played perspective, just hasn't been the player that I think many were expecting him to be this year, and it's been a bit unfortunate for him. I know Jimmy Smith also has kind of not been the best version of himself. I mean, he is somebody who has fought a lot to, whether it be through injuries or whatnot. He only has the tackles are, for a cornerback, they can be relative, but he only has 9 this season. He has been in and out, obviously. And, for a player in Smith who has meant so much to this Baltimore organization, it's been a bit disappointing to see him like this. He still has high quality play in him, but I think it's just more few and far in between than it has been over the course of his career, which is, could be coming to an end as soon as this offseason, which has been unfortunate. But on the defense, I mean, you kind of take what you're given here. The Ravens have lost a ton of key pieces, started with Marcus Peters and has kind of gone down the list a little bit. And, I guess another disappointment for me would be Malik Harrison. I thought Harrison was going to have a big year too, and we kind of saw both Queen and Harrison struggle in the first part of the year, and then Queen really take it up a notch, and Harrison kind of, he had his thing. He got injured, he got shot in the thigh in Cleveland during the bye week, and so he has not been, totally healthy and hasn't had as many of those opportunities. So, look, I completely understand that. But I'm talking about more in the beginning of the season when I expected more out of him. And then obviously the thing with them happened. So yeah, the Ravens defense has been dealt a tough hand. I mean, the Ravens team has been dealt a tough hand, but there are certainly positives. Others are negatives, but all in all, they're still in it. Whether they'll make it or not remains to be seen, but they're still in the race as we come up here on week 17. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be answering your mailbag questions. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.